Hello everybody. Eddie hates billion-dollar corporations destroying the environment with nasty-ass factories while they try to gaslight us into thinking that it's our fault and that we should reduce our carbon footprint even though 70% of all greenhouse gas emissions are caused by less than 8 companies here. Okay, look. Yes, live a non-wasteful life, but come on, bruh. It ain't my fault the climate is cooked. I'm gonna try to help, but it ain't gonna do nothing. Don't make me think that this is my fault. I swear that intro has to do with this review, which is of the Toxic Avenger. Yes, that Toxic Avenger. This is a reimagining of the 1984 film of the same name, which I'll touch more on its other adaptations later. But is it good? Is it bad? Is it a little bit of both? Well, I'm here to tell you folks. Well, tell you in my opinion. That's it. You don't have to like it, but I'm just listening to what the good old noggin tells me. I'm not just making up a take for a video, you know. I don't get that many views. It wouldn't be worth giving an opinion for the views because this is probably gonna get like 25 views. I'm not gonna lie. That's the goal for this one. So, do I care enough to make an opinion for that many people? No. So I'm not making an opinion. I'm just listening to what this motherfucker told me after watching the film. I can't control what goes on in there. So let's start off with the gist of it. The Toxic Avenger is a long-awaited remake, or they don't want to call it a remake, so like I said, reimagining of the original 1984 film. And from what I understand, changes a little bit of the origin. In this version, we follow Peter Dinklage as a janitor named Winston, who is widowed, taking care of his stepson, having trouble bonding with him, and life is just ass overall. He's also dying. Just real down on his luck, easy to root for type of character. Stuff happens, then he gets horribly fucking mutated from falling into toxic waste and becomes this. Then he fights people and shit, and lots of gore happens, and movie ensues farther. Not gonna spoil here. I'm also not trying to give a disingenuous, dumbed down explanation. I know that's what it seems like, making it sound worse than it actually is. I actually do really like the premise myself. I just don't know how to explain it without spoiling too much. But if you had told me just that summary and I hadn't seen the movie yet, I think I would still be at least somewhat interested. I'm a sucker for radiation and its consequences as a concept. Godzilla is one of my favorite characters ever. And for a more realistic example, I thought the Oppenheimer film was absolutely phenomenal. So, it's a metaphor I think can be used extremely well. And, this is superhero-like. I like heroes. And you know what? I was somewhat interested. And I did watch the movie. And I did have a good time. I found it enjoyable, but I think it leaves a lot of potential on the table. But you know what? For a movie that almost didn't come out at all, things could be a lot worse. It's technically a 2023 film, not even a 2025 film. So why are we just now seeing it? Well, after completing the project, the movie struggled to find a distributor because apparently its over-the-top violence was too much and it would be hard to sell to the masses. Which, they weren't completely wrong. The numbers aren't looking good in the box office from what I can tell, which I hate to say. I don't care for box office at all. And on top of that, I especially don't care when it comes to a review video. I don't think the quality of the film has anything to do with how much money it makes. But unfortunately, if we want a sequel, this probably is going to need to make some bread. But more on that later, unless I forget. But back to the actual quality of the film. The actual overall look and vibe feels B-movie-ish. On one side, it's kind of nice. I like the campiness. But on the other side, I don't know. The cinematography is nothing special, and the editing feels a bit off at times. The main one that stands out is the main transformation scene. Maybe I'm missing the charm, but I thought that looked really not well done. I don't know, it didn't look great. I think that could have been edited to hit a bit harder. It's the scene where our main protag goes from human to monster. It feels like a pretty pivotal moment, and it just didn't connect with me as much. And it wasn't because of the moment itself, not the writing itself. A lot of that had to do with how it was presented. And I don't know how to explain it fully, technically, but that's just one example of multiple where I think the editing wasn't my favorite personally. Once again, this is all my opinion, Its effects are a high point though, as they really commit to practicality for the most part, which I am a huge fan of. But I'm just confused on where all the money spent on this movie went. Was it the actors? Kevin Bacon is in this movie, and I don't even care for his character. He plays the main villain, a CEO asshole character. Pretty forgettable, to be honest, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I don't even know if I want to talk about his character in this review. I just don't care enough. My point is that B movies are fine. They can be some of your favorite movies, you know, they are always a fun time. There's a reason so many people watch them, and so many of them. But it does hurt to compare them to a movie such as this with a budget of 200 fucking million. Because when you watch the movie and hear that budget side by side, things just don't make sense. Feels like a random ass middle of the pack movie that back in the day people would have happened to just like a lot because it has a bit of quirk behind it rather than a big budget superhero film. And also, like I mentioned earlier, these crazy ass budgets we have made standard nowadays just make it so much harder for a movie to be a success box office wise when this did not need to cost this much. This could have been done for less and probably better if you just, I don't know, changed some actors out, didn't money launder. I don't know what fucking happened here. I'm not the goddamn accountant, but in my humble opinion, this did not have to be this way. Now, I don't want to soak and bask in the negative. I did have a lot of laughs and a decent enough time overall. At the very least, I think this was worth the watch, but I don't know if I'll be rushing to rewatch it anytime soon. And look, man, I get it. Everything I've said so far, this is what a trauma film is supposed to be. Sure. But that doesn't mean I have to love how it was done here specifically. So I'm still gonna speak my truth on things I didn't like, you know? But yeah, plot-wise, storytelling-wise, things are pretty cut and dry. Very simple to follow story. And that's cool and all, but where I think this film either makes it or breaks it for its viewers is how much they enjoy the comedy and the absurdness throughout. Because I feel like that's where most of the conversation around this movie revolves around anyways. I don't see too many people actually talking about the contents of the film rather than the in-your-faceness of it. In my opinion, the comedy is hit or miss, but I liked it more than I didn't, I think. Because when it hits, it fucking hit. When it missed, though, you know, it always hurts when jokes don't hit. But I think it did hit comedically more than it missed, at least for me. Once again, this is an extremely subjective subject because humor as a whole is just a subjective thing. So take this all with a grain of salt. But I thought it had great comedic timing in a lot of moments. Like when the main character finds out he's dying. That shouldn't be a funny scene. But it had a funny ass moment with the doctor delivering the news and just the way he was going about it. I'm not going to retell it all because jokes aren't really as funny when a random ass Mexican YouTuber retells them. But just trust me, bro. There's also goofy little title cards when new locations are shown that I liked. Just little things like these and the unapologetic, exaggerated dialogue at times just work in the movie's favor, giving it some morsel of identity. The other half, which kind of goes hand in hand with this anyways, is the gore because that's the other big draw of this movie. It's insane. So much of it, and kind of like the comedy, you're either gonna be really into it or be fucking mortified. You know, probably don't take good old Graham out of this one, but you know, you don't watch this film without knowing what you're getting into on that end. Don't blame me if you watch this and are surprised to see the main character shove his fist in the enemy's ass and pull out some intestines. That's just how shit goes, man. No pun intended, actually. That's crazy. That's a pretty good pun. But I will say I appreciate when a maturely rated film, this is technically unrated, I think, but it's probably closer to R than PG-13. But I like when movies like that have more to it than just haha sex, haha cursing, dicks in your face, I don't know, as the reason it's rated R, as the main selling point. Now, this does have cursing and sex remarks, don't get me wrong, but it has more than just that is what I'm trying to say here. It actually takes advantage of the unratedness, not just doing it to say, hey, look guys, we have a movie for adults only as like every fucking trailer, or, you know, every goddamn marketing scheme. I'm gonna take a little bit of a tangent for a second. You guys want to know something fucking hilarious? I assumed going into this that this was based off a comic book and that people just loved the original movie, but the comic was the real OG, but nobody cared because it wasn't as popular as the original movie, so that's what everyone thinks of. So I actually read the first 2 issues of the newest comic run, as I thought that would be a better starting point going into this than watching an adaptation. So imagine how damn stupid I felt when I found out that the original film was the origin of the entire franchise and not a comic. Eddie, how did you not know that? The movie came out in '84, bro. I was negative 30 years old, okay? So the only thing that I realized before this was when I was going down the comic websites and saw the Toxic Avenger 2025. So I just fucking assumed it was a comic first. God damn it. So yeah, my only knowledge of this character is the new movie and 2 fucking issues of a new comic, okay? Whoops, my bad. And the reason I mention this is because I am a person that definitely likes to check out the original versions of things as often as possible before consuming a later version, because I like to match my experience to that of the context of the viewers at the time. I don't want to watch something knowing already what it becomes later. I want to be just as amazed as the audience are seeing a concept for the first time. For example, Star Wars, an order that no one can agree upon. Watch it how you want to. It doesn't matter to me. But when I first fully committed to getting into the series back in like middle school, like of course I'd seen Star Wars before, but I was like, you know what? We're a big boy now. We're gonna actually watch these in an order, get into the franchise as a whole, not just randomly whenever the shit comes on cable. I got the VHS for 1 through 6, and could I have watched 1 through 6? Definitely. The creator even recommends it. But I wanted to watch the 4 through 6 trilogy, then 1 through 3, because I wanted to feel how the audiences felt back then when these movies were coming out, piecing it together how they did. Sadly, that's a case just about everybody already knows who Darth Vader is anyways, but still, the movies are more than their spoiler moments. It's more about the experiences as a whole. And that's how I am with most franchises, even with a game, you know? Or like when I started Yakuza, a lot of people recommended me to start with 0 because chronologically that's the first and a lot of this stuff, but that's not what came out first. The first games were 1 through 5, so I wanted to start with 1 because 0 didn't exist when 1 came out. Fate, a lot of people recommend Fate 0 before the rest. Well, Fate 0 didn't exist when Fate started. It was Fate Stay Night. So I wanted to start with the original. So, like, now with that one, I kind of cheated because I watched the anime version of Fate Stay Night, then UBW, then Heaven's Feel instead of the visual novel first. But you get my point. Like, I still try to be as accurate as possible to the original order of things coming out. And in this case, I mean, it wasn't like an old comic or anything, but I was still like, oh, if I read a comic before the movie, that'd be better than watching an adaptation before the movie. But like I said, I didn't fucking realize that the movie was the original. So my whole point is that if I had realized the old movie was the start and not a comic, I would have went out of my way to watch the original before seeing this. Because now if I watch the old movie, I'm going to have this one in mind. And, you know, even without meaning to, I feel like our brains, if they've seen a concept from the ground up that they've seen before, even knowing it's the original version, they're just going to be stuck to that first one that they saw and constantly think back to that, even with the original one. However, I did have a good old time with this movie, and if the original is better, sign me the fuck up, because I could see how an 80s version of this could be iconic. I'm a Pete, and there's other stuff too in the franchise, but let's just start with this. Would y'all want to see a review on that? Let me know in the comments, because I am going to watch it at some point. It's just, I don't know if I'm putting it on the channel, you know, so if y'all want to see that, let me know. Back to the topic at hand, the actual review, the point of why we're here. I like that the movie doesn't stick around too long, pretty short and to the point. Pace doesn't slow down too much at all ever. There's a few scenes that, you know, didn't have to be there, I guess, but you know, at a runtime of an hour 40, I think it hits that sweet spot of not too long, not too short, just about right. No girl's ever said that to me. Also, as I mentioned at the start of this review, the deeper messages, while not like super life-changing and perfectly done, are ones that I like, that I appreciate. The radioactive and pollution shit, obviously, but also the anti-big corporation message is sick. Dealing with physical deformities, just the overall underdog story. There actually is some substance here despite how the film sells itself. And that's where I struggle with this movie, because the tonal whiplash is kind of nuts at times. The first and second halves of this movie are kind of completely different. The start has more balance between the tones, the serious stuff and the silly. Then they say fuck it and go nuts to butts later on. Which I guess you could make the argument that that is a parallel of the main character's journey and feelings towards life and all that. You know, once the main character says fuck it, the film says fuck it. But I'm not sure that's an actual intention here. And even if it was, I just wish it was a tiny bit more consistent, because I did like the deeper stuff quite a bit. The opening of this film stands out so much to me because it's so strong. It makes you care for the story and this main character's personal journey. And the latter half, I feel, just doesn't reward you for that investment nearly as much as I hoped. It does reward you for the investment, it does tie everything up. I just don't know if it was done to the best of its possible ability. I really don't know how to explain things at the time without sounding like I'm an obnoxious asshole, so sorry. However, once again, outside of the storytelling aspects, I loved the fights and how they were shown to us and the goofiness of the later stuff. So it's not a complete boo later portion of the movie type of thing that I'm trying to sell here, because, you know, who doesn't like comedy and some slasher gore? I know I do. So I must reiterate that I don't hate it. You know, I'm so bad at this reviewing thing. I always feel bad saying anything negative. I want everyone to win. I want to hand out fucking participation awards, and I always try to focus on the good, even on movies that I dislike. Not saying that I fucking hate this movie or anything, just even if there is a movie that I really don't like, I will still try to at least find something that I do like to talk good about it. But unfortunately, like I mentioned earlier, the public speaks of their wallets, so participation awards are just not going to happen. Let's move on to pretty much the end of the review video, though, because I've mentioned pretty much everything I wanted to mention. Eddie, you seem to be pretty back and forth on this movie. Do you think it's good or not? I don't think it's a matter of good or bad. I think the movie is okay. It's fun enough. But I think what's more important is what I recommend it for you guys. You know, decent films are fun, but I feel I'd rather watch peak fiction on a daily basis and more often than just average stuff, you know? But I also do recognize we need a healthy dose of decentness in our lives, whether it's a junk food movie or an honest, heartfelt attempt at something great that just fell a little bit flat, but is still good enough to watch and enjoy. Whichever one of these applies to this movie depends on who you're asking, I guess. But I don't know. I hesitate to recommend this. Because if you aren't a fan of gore or crude stuff at all, I don't think the rest of the movie is so outlandishly amazing that you can ignore that or brush it to the side. It is still nice, but I don't think it's like 10 out of 10. Just sit through the stuff that you're not going to like. Sit through the gore and the nastiness because the plot is so riveting and life-changing, it's going to be worth it. No, I'm not going to recommend this to someone that I don't think is going to like that aspect because, no. But if you're a fan of crazy, wacky adult shit, or even just okay with it, and like it's not going to turn you off from a movie completely, even if it's not your main draw, like you'll still give a movie a chance despite that, then I think it's a good enough time. Probably like a one and done type of watch. Probably great with friends on a random night, some shit like that. Because since I don't shut my eyes and turn away when blood and guts hit the screen or when a character drops an F-bomb or something, I was able to lose myself in the goofiness and embrace the campy environment that we don't get much these days, quite frankly. I did find myself giggling, cackling, laughing, however else you want to say it. So despite me not thinking this movie is that amazing overall, once again, it's good enough for what it aimed to be, which, you know, that's all a movie really has to be. It has its audience. The people that love this movie really fucking love it. So who cares what I think? Clearly the masses are more important because at the end of the day, you want a lot of people to like your movie. I don't know how to put it. I think my enjoyment of what I did like heavily outweighed the stuff that I didn't, enough for me to recommend it to those who can stomach it or are fans of this sort of thing. So yeah, let me know in the comments. Have you seen the Toxic Avenger 2025? Did you like it? Did you hate it? What did you think? Just imagine getting saved by this guy and dying from radioactive sickness that he gave you. Dying in a worse way than you originally would have anyways. I'm sure that's not how it works, but that thought hasn't left my mind all week. Post-credit scene to the review, I guess, because I forgot to mention. I love the post-credit scene of this movie. You know, it's kind of one of those like, oh, you're still here. There's not a real post-credit scene type of post-credit scenes. I don't know if that's a spoiler or not, whatever. Like I said, it doesn't actually matter. But what I fucking hated, and this has nothing to do with the actual movie itself, the two workers there were cleaning up the theater because everybody in my theater left before the post-credit scene, which is kind of crazy to me. You know, not to be like that nerd, like Marvel fan. I can't believe you left before the post-credit scene. You know, there's more, right? But I was the only one, and the theater wasn't empty like before. It had a decent enough amount of people. Like, I don't know, maybe a fourth of the theater was filled. So the fact that I was the only one left at the post-credit scene was insane to me. And the two workers were cleaning up the theater while yapping loud the whole time. And I get it. Do your job. And honestly, at the end of the day, it is just a movie. So maybe I'm a bit Karenish about that. But it did low-key piss me off because I was trying to pay attention to this amazing post-credit scene. But I couldn't focus because these two workers were yapping. But like I said, I get it. It's the end of the day. You're probably getting paid like shit. It's customer service, so you're probably getting treated like shit. But selfishly, I kind of didn't want that to happen during my fucking movie. But the movie was over, so I don't know. Maybe I'm in the wrong. I don't know. That's your post-credit scene for this. Subscribe. Bye.